Well, howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. And I got a story for you guys today. What we have here is a 1945 International Harvester M-5H-6 2.5 ton 6-wheel drive truck made for the United States Marine Corps. This is a really good one, and I've been waiting about 7 months now to tell this story, and I kind of didn't want to say anything or do anything about it until I had the truck here. Just kind of one of those things that I always try and make sure I actually have the thing before I start making videos and stuff about it. But we got her here, and boy was it ever a struggle. This story goes all the way back to March of this year. I went out snow machining with a buddy of mine, and while we were driving out, we were riding out in his pickup, and he was telling me about a fellow that he'd worked with, Mark, and he said Mark used to have this old military truck in his backyard, and Eric was pretty sure it was a International, and I was like, of course, right then I started listening real good when he said International. But we went out snow machining, saw some really cool old stuff in the woods. That's my favorite kind of stuff, is old stuff in the woods. And we actually rode down the road that Mark lives on and stopped for a second on the snow machines and looked, and we could see the yellow outline of this truck. And we just couldn't tell exactly what it was at the time, and thought, oh well, maybe we'll catch Mark sometime and have a look at it. We went about on our day, and as we were coming back up the road on the snow machines, here comes Mark. And Mark and Eric recognized each other real quick, and they got to talking, and Eric asked if we could go have a look at this thing in Mark's backyard, and Mark was like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. So we went, and we were walking into his backyard there, just marching through the snow, and as we were walking up to this thing, I immediately recognized it as, well, at the time I recognized it as a World War II International. I wasn't too sharp on these things, to know the exact model and stuff, and in the snow it was really hard to tell because part of it's missing. So we looked at it and talked to Mark and kind of made a deal on the thing, had a look at this thing while it was sitting there, and it was just something amazing to see because these World War II Internationals were almost entirely built for the United States Marine Corps and the Navy Department. Well, the Navy Department more so. They were used by the Marines, they were used by the Navy, they were used by the Seabees, they were used extensively in the Pacific in World War II. Most of them were cargo trucks or dump trucks. Some of them were sold as cabin chassis though, just a bare frame in the back, and some of those were turned into wreckers. There was kind of an oil field bed set up, and I'm not sure if the oil field bed setup was actually made during the war or made for the Navy or the Marines, but it is really cool to see there's at least 2 of them out there of M-5H-6 Internationals with oil field bed setup with gin poles on it and everything. Those are really cool. But these things, like I said, were made for the Navy, and I don't know if you guys know much about interior Alaska, but there's no oceans in interior Alaska, so the Navy wasn't really active in interior Alaska, so these things are not common up here. I do know of a few of these trucks in Alaska. I know there's at least 2 4-wheel drive Internationals, maybe 3. Eric remembers there being one 4-wheel drive International, World War II era International for sale down in the valley. So there's 3 of those. And I only know of one other M-5H-6 in Alaska in recent times. There was a guy that posted on Facebook pictures of a M-5H-6 down in the Anchorage area that was an old State of Alaska snowblower. It still had the snowblower on the front and the big engine power unit on the back to power the snowblower. So at the moment I know of and can confirm that there are at least 4 World War II Internationals in Alaska. I'm sure there's more, there always is, but at the moment there's 4 of them. I've seen pictures of, well, I know of a picture of 2 M-5H-6s at a naval station down in Adak, which is out in the Aleutian chain of Alaska. So they were kind of around, but they're really not common at all. I genuinely didn't have high hopes for finding one of these in interior Alaska, and somehow we found one. And yeah, when we found it this spring, we kind of talked to Mark and made a plan on getting it out, and Mark was all game for it, and so I was really excited for that. Like I said, I didn't want didn't want to say much until I actually had the thing in the yard, because it's one of those things. And now we get to the 3-week saga of getting this whole truck here. So Eric and I went out 2 weekends ago, and we high lifted the front of this truck out of the ground and got wheels on it. We got tires on this thing, and it was in the ground. If you see the one picture, I'll have pictures overlaid on this, which you've probably already seen by now. We high lifted the front of this truck up, and the whole front axle was just buried in dirt. The driver's side brake drum on the front of this thing was so buried in dirt, I cleared all the leaves off and could just see the top of the brake drum. So we pulled this whole thing out, got wheels on the front of it, got it setting on these. They don't hold air, but it's better than having this thing stuck in the ground. And then we sort of had a plan for getting this thing out. Obviously it's cut in half, but what we ended up doing worked out so much easier. Mark backed his little dozer up to this thing, and he's got a ripper bar on the back. It would have had 3 teeth on it for a ripper. He doesn't have any of the teeth for the ripper right now, but of course it's a hydraulic bar that goes up and down. So we were able to chain the back of this to the ripper bar, and then he picked up the ripper bar and it just picks the back end of this thing right up. And he just walked the truck right out to the road for me. And all I had to do was back the trailer under it. It worked out perfect. And that's how I got the truck portion up on the trailer. It was an interesting one because from the outside of the tire to the outside of the tire, this thing is as wide as the trailer I was using. So I can tell you that I went hellbound for chains on this thing because I did not want the load to shift at all. If it shifted 2 inches to either side on the trailer, it would have fallen off the trailer, and then I would have been in a heap of trouble. But I got her chained down, got her here, and then the back half was a struggle of itself. That was insane. So what had happened is Mark himself actually cut this thing in half. I think like 30 years ago he cut this thing in half. It was like 20 to 30 years ago. So this truck was down at a gold claim down in the bottom of the creek there, and the guy that owned the claims needed them. They needed to be cleaned up because you have to do this thing called reclamation. A lot of people don't do it with their mining claims, but it's a really important thing that you have to do. It's actually an agreement you make with the state, is that you have to do reclamation. You clean up all your junk, all the equipment, all the rusty old iron, all your oils, all your fuels. Everything needs to come out, and then you need to return the land about as close as to the way it was when you found it, because the only thing you're supposed to be removing is the mineral that you are mining for. So the gentleman that owned the claims needed them cleaned up, and this truck was there. And at the time, it actually had a cement mixer on the back of it. And the cement mixer is actually still there. I actually went and looked at it, and it's really neat, and it's very evidently the same yellow with red underneath of it. That is the cement mixer that came off of the back of this truck. So this truck was a cement mixer. I can't tell from the VIN number on this truck or any of the information whether or not this truck was a cabin chassis when it came out of the factory in 1945, but at some point in time it got a cement mixer put on the back of it. They yarded the cement mixer off of this thing, and I'm sitting here looking at the back half of this truck right now. They torched the truck in half, and they welded a 5th wheel plate onto the back half of this thing, onto the tandem axles. And they used the back half of the truck as a dolly to move I want to say it's about a 40-foot flatbed trailer, a triple axle, semi-trailer. And so they stuck the back half of this thing under that trailer and used the back half to dolly the trailer around, pushing it with dozers or the loader or whatever they could. And so that's what ended up happening to this truck. They cut all the drive shafts. It's insane because the truck is really complete. The whole thing's here. They just cut it in half. And I was really thankful. Mark was an insanely nice guy, and obviously he used his dozer to get the front half out, and we used his dozer to get the back half out as well. The back half was, somehow it was worse to get out than the front half. We thought the front half was going to be, a real pain in the butt, but the back half really put up a fight. It was really sunk into the ground, and then it's real muddy where he's at. And so the passenger side of the back half of this thing was just sunk into the ground, And so what we ended up doing, surprisingly, the fifth wheel released really easily, and we were able to high lift the trailer as high up as we could go out of the back half, out of the fifth wheel plate and everything, so that all the weight was off of the axles. And then with a little finagling and some digging and some chopping with an axe, actually, then we were able to pull the back half out. And we really struggled getting the duals off of this thing. I needed all 4 of the outer duals needed to come off of this thing to get it narrow enough to fit on the trailer. Luckily, I actually have this trinket. The Swench is actually what came with the 1-ton square body I got in the last video. That was the last, the double 1-ton revival that I did. That's what was on the back of that square body, was a Swench. It's a big manual hand-operated impact wrench, and that thing works wonders. I can tell you that is a really handy tool. Now that I know what it is, I'm going to be holding on to that, I can tell you that much. It actually popped most of the lug nuts off, no sweat. Eric had to go get his oxyacetylene torch because he lives somewhat close to Mark. He went and got his oxyacetylene torch, and we had to heat up probably 6 lug nuts to really get enough heat and croil into the threads to get those last few lug nuts off. But we got all 4 outer duals off of this thing and got the back half up on the trailer. It wasn't terrible, but boy, it was a lot of work, and that's how this thing ended up being here. Like I said, it's one of only 2 international M-5H-6s that I know of in Alaska. I'm sure there's more, but boy, it was a heck of a project. I'm really excited for this thing. This is going to be a gooder of a project, but it's going to be a lot of work, and unfortunately, it's probably going to have to sit here for a little while before I can get around to it. I'd like to get more done on my flat fender M38 project before I start thinking about this thing. I don't know. It's trucks that are cut in half are usually a heck of a project, but let's take a second. Let's walk around this thing. I'm excited to show you guys this truck. This is a good one. Well, we'll just start with the important half. This is the important half. This is all the really crucial parts and stuff to an M-5H-6, obviously. Now, what I don't know entirely is what axle International used for these things, but it is a big axle. I do know International used their own outers on these axles, so the backing plate and the brakes and everything is all International Harvester, and they use these rubber seals to cover up the knuckle, and so they're kind of an open knuckle in there underneath all this. These seals are hard to find, which is great that those are completely destroyed. And you can see just all the dirt on this thing. It was buried up to the springs itself. I was actually surprised that the high lifts were able to pick this thing out of there. And somehow, when we were towing it out of there, both front wheels are turning on this thing. If we look in here, you can see it was buried in there real good. I'm sure there's a lot of water in that axle, which is great. Looking at the front of this thing, though, this is something else that's kind of a crucial element. Oh, it still has a hook on it even. Look at that. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to start cleaning things out of this thing yet, but the whole winch assembly is here. And it's all complete, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. Things need to get freed up on this thing. Oh yeah. She's been sitting for a couple years. But yeah, we have the winch is there, and the drive shaft is still there, and there's still the PTO on the transfer case. So all that's complete, and you know, she'll be working in no time. The winch drum actually moves as well, which is great. And somebody manufactured this bumper, and they did a heck of a job. I mean, look at the welds on that. They plugged up the ends, angled it in real nice. I mean, this thing's got a heck of a chin sticking out there. They did, at some point, somebody cut, there would have been the guard around the headlights, and somebody took those out. I'm sure they would have had slats kind of like the grill here. Somebody took that out. I'm sure it was covering up the headlights a little bit. So I might at some point want to remanufacture the outside guards for this thing, but that's a little ways down the road. This fender got pretty bunged up. I might be able to high lift that out. I should have, when I had the skid steer up here, I should have just picked it up with that. It still has one of the international badges on it. Somehow that still is present, which is amazing. This thing's just crazy. You can still see some of the olive drab coming through on the yellow. Somebody put a big tripod mirror on it, very similar to what's on a old Ford. Over here is where the battery would have gone. I'm almost certain that this is a 6-volt truck, so that's a good time. We actually had to cut this running board out of a tree. There was a big birch tree. It would have been right about here, and this was on the ground, of course, and the roots had grown over the corner of this running board, so we had to cut the whole thing out. See, there's still some roses in there. You can see the PTO right there for the winch. Just a stout old machine. Just one of those bucket list trucks that I never thought I'd be able to find. If we keep moving our way around this thing, you can see the doors got pretty bunged up at one point in time, and somebody welded plates on to try and reinforce it. The old mirror bracket's still on the driver's side here. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten this door open yet. This thing got stoved in pretty hard there, so that door is pretty stuck. It was funny moving this thing around and talking to Mark. He actually felt bad about doing damage to the cab and stuff, and you know, we had to tell him, Eric and I were like, Mark, you know, you saved the darn thing. It didn't get scrapped. All the equipment on that gold claim, the guy said, like, he'd wanted it all just taken to the auction and sold and gotten rid of. And Mark was like, well, nobody, you know, at that point in time, nobody was going to want a World War II 2.5-ton truck. And so that's how this thing ended up just getting saved. And it really got preserved sitting in his place. One of the amazing things that I thought is that the transfer case is still here. This is a really important part, obviously. And the transfer case is all present, and thankfully the transfer case is under the cab, so when they cut the frame off, they just left the transfer case where it was. You can see they pulled this drive shaft out of the slip yoke. That drive shaft's gone now, and then this drive shaft was cut. This is actually, this tube here is this drive shaft. It was still on there when we found the truck, and when we got it high lifted up out of the ground and sitting up on blocks, in order to tow this thing with the dozer, I just snapped that off. Not like I was going to be able to use that drive shaft anyways. Unfortunately, they torched the frame really close to the mounts there, and so it's going to be a heck of a pain to sort of splice the frame back together. But honestly, I might end up needing to find another section of frame for the back half of this truck. That half of frame is really, really rough, but the 2.5-ton transfer case is pretty important because a lot of these got yarded out. They were actually used in monster trucks quite a bit. There was a square body Chevy monster truck I know of for sure that actually had a M-5H-6 transfer case in it. And there was actually a guy down in the Kansas area. He had like 2 or 3 of these transfer cases for sale. He was trying to sell M-5H-6 transfer cases for monster trucks, which is kind of neat that these things survived kind of post-war. Folks were still using this technology. Yeah, this yoke, you can see there's still roots grown into this yoke. This thing was it was becoming one with the ground. Just about everything on this truck got cut or mangled in some form or another. I am missing most of the drive shaft between the transmission and the transfer case there. You can see I still have the yoke. I'm just missing the other half to the transfer case. But the front drive shaft to the front axle is still there. And boy, I never thought I'd see a drive shaft longer than the front drive shaft on a highboy, but would you look at that thing? It's got to be 4 foot long. Transfer case even turns still. In a lot of ways, this truck is surprisingly well preserved, and in a lot of ways, it is not. If we have a look inside. So this was originally a low profile cab. It would have had a windshield frame that would have folded down, and then it would have rolled out of the factory without a top on it. And somebody really just went to town building this top. They did an insanely good job. Like, they got the angle on it just perfect. It's a sharp looking cab. She's got plexiglass windows. I'm sure it would have had a plexiglass back window there. And then it actually still has a glass windshield in it. And you could see inside, I mean, this thing is just incredibly well preserved. Considering what it is and what it's been through, it is insanely well preserved. We still have all of the tags. So there's your permissible speed tag. There's your shift tag. So all the information for the winch PTO, transfer case, and then the overdrive transmission. I need to get all these tags cleaned up so I can actually read them. She's got a 10,000 pound winch on her. That's really cool. It has the red 361 engine on it, and then this is the really important tag that we can see here, 2.5 ton to 3 ton 6x6 cargo truck. What I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure they were all labeled as cargo trucks. That's the one kind of question that I had, was whether or not they would have said something different if it was like a cab and chassis or not, but I think they were all labeled as cargo trucks. International Harvester M-5H-6, maintaining vehicle, U.S. Marine Corps. We got the serial number there, gross weight, max payload, trailer load, date of delivery, 5 of 1945, and then gasoline and oil information there. So yeah, we got transfer case shifters, parking brake, the transmission itself. It's kind of neat. They use these cast iron, or cast steel rods and everything, and the old lockout still works for that. The winch shifter down there, brake and clutch pedals. It got a heater put in under the dash. Of course, it's up here in Alaska, so you know it needed the heat. It's kind of neat. They have this lockout on the winch shifter there so that you didn't kick it with your feet. Mark had the steering wheel tied straight, and I needed to cut that rope, obviously, to get it, sort of angle it and load it on the trailer. It was kind of a pain winching it up on the trailer because the cab wanted to walk either which way as I was towing it. So that was a bit of a struggle, but obviously we got her. I'm not sure what that tag was yet. I haven't figured that out, but we'll get there. Just all the switches and everything is just incredibly well preserved. That's your light switch with the blackout lockout. So if you just pulled on the light switch, all you'd get was the blackout lights, and then you had to push the side knob in to get actual headlights so that the enemy didn't find you while you were mixing your cement. All the gauges and everything, just everything in this thing is incredibly well preserved. It didn't get bunged up or messed up in any real way, which is amazing. That, I'm pretty sure, is a extra distributor cap for the engine that was on the cement mixer, not for this truck. That's some good flagging tape there. Radiator hose, extra spark plugs. Yee. Bee's nest. Oh yeah, there is a good bee's nest there. Look at that guy. Handy. Somehow the glove box is holding together. Looks like all that's in there is a full set of spark plugs. International Harvester quality glove box still springs up. Doesn't latch, but it still springs up. It's kind of neat. So it didn't have a horn button, but I had this horn button, the old triple diamond horn button. And that actually does fit in the steering wheel, so she has a horn button now. Hop out. I'm pretty sure this guy is a cover to go on the cement mixer with the old brass and glass sight oiler for it. Got a carburetor there. Must have been for the cement mixer as well. Another cover plate. That's the parking brake for this thing. Somebody was ripping the old Vantage 100 cigarettes. Oh, geez, that's some good ether there. Wonder what kind of damage that would cause. Hello. Got the parking brake. I'm actually real excited I got this hook with this thing. It was in the cab here, so not a gooder. Something for the fuel lines must be. I've looked around a little bit in here, but I haven't really dove in. I've been busy with everything, and I've been trying to keep some surprises for the video, I guess, so I can actually be shocked to find things. We got a drive shaft that isn't even for this truck. Something chocolate. The old Coca-Cola Classic. That must have been late 80s when the fallout happened, because there was the new Coke, and then everybody got mad. They wanted the classic Coke, so they started making Coke Classic again. Some good work gloves. Spare rags. Under here is the gas tank. You can see the fuel fill over there going in. Kind of like a Jeep. Gas tank's under the cab. The seat's in really nice shape too. Obviously it was recovered. I don't think the Marine Corps was going for the red faux leather look. I'll have to fight with that later. And the important part here, still have all the hood latches and everything. And of course, the very important part, we still have a complete RD 361 engine in here. Head to toe, everything is still there somehow, including the original giant military voltage regulator, which is really neat to see. It's still present. These things ran an updraft Zenith carburetor. Still has all these roses growing up through there. Old generator. I'll need to look at the generator and double check, but I am almost dead certain this thing is a 6-volt system. Oil bath in the way. That's funny that the heater in the cab goes right into the oil bath air cleaner. Granted, the lid needs to go down more, but that's all right. It does have a spot of blue under the hood, but I don't see any blue anywhere else on the cab. If we can open this hood side without tipping the other side down, let's see. The answer is no, you cannot. But that's all right. Set that guy there. She's just cherry. I can't even believe that everything is as complete as it is. Still has the fuel pump with the sediment bowl on it. It's kind of funny they put the fuel pump on this side and then the carburetor's on the other side, but that's all right. The only really crucial thing this truck's missing is the starter itself, but I'm pretty sure, and maybe somebody more knowledgeable on these can cue me in, I'm pretty sure that all of the RD engines used the same starter. So like the RD 450 and stuff should all have the same starter. So that's not a terribly hard thing to find. I think it is missing the coil though. Either that or I don't know where the coil would be on this thing. I haven't put a wrench on the engine, so I don't entirely know if it's seized or not. I'm sure it probably is, but that's nothing too Nothing too terrible to fight with. She does have full and very clean oil. Somehow she's just been preserved. It's been preserved better than a lot of things that I've seen. We'll try and not stick birch seeds back down in the oil pan. There we go. Just a beautiful example of an M-5H-6 in my opinion. It's the best example of an M-5H-6 that I've ever seen because it's the only M-5H-6 that I've ever seen in person. That is a really good question. I do not know where the coil would be on this engine. It might have been back on the firewall or something. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out someday. It's neat. It's got a little screw grease cup on here to oil the distributor. That's funny. Let's see if I can get it off of there. This is just a neat... World War II is such an interesting time technology-wise because there's a lot of old technology mixed with what we would think of as modern technology. So like a little grease cup like this, you would have pulled it off and you would have filled this little cup with grease. And then you would have put this on a few threads when it was full of grease. And as you would thread this on, it would push the grease in. And so if you just filled that up with grease, you'd put it on a couple threads like that, and it would push some of the grease in. And then whatever your service intervals are, like whenever you'd change the oil or something, you'd run that on a few more threads, it'd push a little more grease in, and then you'd just go on like that, and it would kind of keep the distributor greased up as you went. And then it's probably got somewhere on here little oil cups and stuff that you would have flipped the little lid up and put oil in. I'm sure that generator has a couple on it. They usually did for their bearings and stuff. Thank God it still has the radiator in it, because I bet that's a hard piece to find for one of these. It seems like a lot of stuff that got abandoned out in the woods up here anyways, the drug enthusiasts have gotten to. They usually cut or pull all the radiators out for scrap metal. I can't imagine they get any money out of them, but I don't know. It must be a lucrative industry because they all seem to pull them out of everything they can find. It's almost impossible, I swear, to find an old truck sitting out in the woods that still has a radiator in it. But this one was preserved because it was sitting in Mark's yard. Big old Delco Remy tag on the voltage regulator. Man, this thing's just... I gotta tell you, when Eric and I got the front wheels put on this thing, we must have sat there and just looked at this thing for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes or something. It seemed like forever. Well, it seemed like a really short time at that point. We just sat there and looked at this thing. It's just such a beautiful truck. Just an absolute brute of a workhorse. Nice workstation that you can sit on when you're working on that engine. Big old Tulsa winch. Wait, kind of... Oh, I'm going to have to struggle with that. Hold on. Aha. I win. There we go. Good. This thing even has a cowl vent. And I have... Oh, there it is. I haven't even looked at that. Oh yeah, cowl vent. Cowl vents are just like the greatest thing about like pre-1950s engineering. My favorite thing has got to be cowl vents. They're so much fun. I'm sure they cause a lot of rust, but they're so much fun. And then of course, the back half. Like I said, this thing fought us tooth and nail. Unfortunately, all four brake drums are seized, or at least two of them are seized, one on each axle, because International Harvester was one of the only companies making cargo trucks, 2.5-ton cargo trucks with lockers in them. They put lockers in the rear axle, or in the rear axles, both axles, each one had a locker in it, which really made these things capable, made them somewhat desirable at the time because obviously lockers kind of get the job done. Some of these trucks even had lockers in the front axle, which made them a huge pain to drive. I know for sure that one does not have a locker in it because you can spin one wheel without the other one spinning. Another thing they used was the dang old Hendrickson walking beam suspension. So you can see that giant beam there. There's one on each side, and that would allow the two axles to articulate independently, which is a super neat design. The Hendrickson walking beam suspension has been used for ages and ages. In fact, I know for a fact there's at least one here. There might be two. Let's go have a look. Yeah, here we go. Here's another. This is a lot heavier of a Hendrickson setup, and this system actually on this truck doesn't even have the leaf springs. It's just these giant rubber blocks. This, like I said, is a lot heavier of a setup, but it's just that giant beam right there allows your front and rear axles to sort of articulate independently, like as you're going over bumps. International Harvester during World War II, even, oh geez, there's chunks of stupid tarps everywhere. I try and keep things clean, but it's always a struggle. International during World War II even had ads where they were kind of flaunting the walking beam suspension. One of them's on their frame twister setup that they had at the Fort Wayne Works, and you can see the M-5H-6 had one axle way up on the top of a block, and the front axle was all the way down in a dip. Just super neat ads that they ran with these trucks. The World War II propaganda machine where they were running all the ads, you know, trying to get folks to buy war bonds and everything, was just a heck of a time for advertising and advertising artwork. It was super neat. And yeah, the Hendrickson's just a really neat suspension. It's really cool that all of this is still here, and that in some respects it should be savable. Unfortunately, they really just mangled the poor frame here. And even worse, they completely welded this fifth wheel plate on here, which is really fascinating. This fifth wheel's in great shape, actually. The plates aren't all worn down. The pin system, all that still works. I mean, it was latched onto the trailer and it released, no sweat, so that might actually be a good fifth wheel plate for future shenanigans. You can see they cut, so the frame would have been longer. They cut that off, and then unfortunately over time it splayed out. Just poor thing. But it's all here, and that's the important part. You can see I got the back chunk of frame rail here. So there's one of the lights, where one of the lights would have been, and then that's the other section of frame. These are kind of absolutely useless, but it was one of those things. They were sitting there, and I couldn't say no to, I couldn't just leave them there. I had to have the whole truck, of course. But we got both chunks, and the only real hard part that I'm missing is the drive shafts themselves. But I might have enough yokes everywhere to make things work and figure things out, get something done. You can see at least I have this drive shaft between the two axles, so there's something. And of course, more tires, so I can get, at some point I'd like to get a couple of these tires that still hold air on the front of this thing. In our battle to get all these tires out, some of them pulled the inner lug nut off instead of the outer, which is one of the issues with Bud lug nuts, is that you have this inner lug nut that threads on to your inner stud, and that's what holds the inner dual on, and then you slide your outer dual over those, and then you put on your outer lug nut. And yeah, sometimes they just spin the inner lug nut off with the outer, and that's going to be a struggle to get those off. I'll probably just end up torching them out because they're not Bud lug nuts are fairly common, and we did mess up some of the studs anyways. So some of the threads got kind of messed up on this thing, but it's all there is the important part. You can see the big old IHC logo cast into this spring hanger. It's just such a fabulous piece of history right here. Like I said, one of those things I never thought I'd actually come across in the wild here in Alaska, and there she was, just sitting in a fella's backyard. That's neat. Little door to get your floor heat going in here. I guess they put the heater in about the only place they could. The only other place would have been right above the steering column there, but you might have kicked it while you were driving. Boy, I could sit here and look at this truck for hours. And I've probably already looked at it for hours between pictures and... There we go. Between pictures and actually looking at this thing, I know I've spent quite a bit of time just staring at it. It's just such an absolute brute of a truck. And it looks great sitting next to the forklift there. Just a magnificent piece of history. I love this thing so much. Man. Leaves everywhere. Oh, heck. I'm going to find a giant socket. Let's see if we can't at least see if that engine will try and turn. Why not? I got nothing better going on. Alrighty, had to run old Eureka down to the shop and find my 3/4 drive socket set so I could find a socket big enough for that thing. I thought I'd go ahead and pop the spark plugs out, if anything, and we'll throw some goo down the cylinders. Just, even if she's locked up, some preventative maintenance. Spark plug 1 doesn't look too bad. I can't imagine this thing's run has ever been run in the last like 30 years or whatever. She appears to have sat for a long time. That one's got a bit of corrosion on it. That's always a good sign. I had to put a giant snipe on that 4th plug to get it to turn at all, so I have a feeling that cylinder is going to look real lovely. That one has some oil on it. That's nice. I would think that the updraft carb has done a little bit to save on this engine. That one's got quite a bit of buildup on it. That's real nice. Geez, I didn't even look at the odometer to know how many miles are on this. This could be a low mile unit. One of the first trucks I've ever had where I can guarantee you that the rear axles have more miles than the front. They might only have an extra mile on them, but yeah, that one's got a bit of rust on it too. It's probably just got some of that PB blaster on it. We'll give some of these give those a bit of loving. This is just cylinder hone in a can. Yep, that one's got a new crosshatch in it. Alrighty. There's a... Oh, it's all the way down there. This truck is like that perfect in-between where it's not quite tall enough that it's worth laying under it, and it's not quite short enough that it's easy to work on, but these fenders are lovely to just sit on. Get some ATF in there. Oh boy, these are going to be fun. Let's see, can we just, yeah, we'll just do that. Spill it down the side of the engine. That's great. Perfect. Lovely. All right, let's see. Can I reach it? No. Oh man, it's all snapped in. All right, I gotta grab that. All right. For those of you out there trying to get your M-5H-6 running, you know, I'm sure everybody's doing that in their free time. It's a 2-inch socket to fit the crank nut. So I don't think I'm going to shear that off anytime soon, but is that turning or is it just tightening? I can't see it. Man, and the ground's all muddy. This is just lovely. Oh, there it is. There, I can see it. I can see it. I don't know if you guys can. I think that ratchet's about to fall off, though. That's great. There we go. Let's see if I can get you guys in there. No, that's just tightening the nut. Neat. And that's loosening the nut. Awesome. She's pretty stuck. Oh, there goes the ratchet. Well, she might be a little stuck. But, hopefully that PB blaster and an ATF will get to work on those cylinders, and in due time she might free up. I do have a curiosity about what's under that valve cover, though, so I guess we'll put the plugs back in and might as well pull the valve cover off and have a look under there. Alrighty, well, funny enough, I thought these were bolts that went through the valve cover. They're not. They're nuts with studs, which just shows how much junk had been built up on these things over the years. Grab the old 13-in-1 here. See if we can't pop this guy off there. See what kind of treasures await us underneath. What this thing is. She's been sitting for a minute. It's hard to lie about that. There we go. How many washers did we fling around, and how much dirt did I just... Oh no! Okay, yeah, this one might need an actual real deal refresh. That is rough. It just got so much condensation under that valve cover. Jeez. What's funny is it's this like flaky rust over oil covered parts. Like the parts are, I think all of these parts are savable. It just got a little bit of rust on them, but boy, that is rough. Well, now we know. We know what we're up against. Might as well. Might as well. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. Well, it's gonna wash all that rust down, but I have a feeling that this cylinder head's gonna have to come off either way. Well, whether or not the cylinder head needs to come off, I think is null and void. I think I'm going to pull the cylinder head off anyways. I think it's going to be a lot harder on everything if I don't just go ahead and pull it. This is one of those rare and special cases where I kind of really care about this thing, and I think that maintaining the original engine would be really neat. And this is one of those ones that I don't really want to completely mess up. The whole truck in general, I don't want to wreck things for the sake of wrecking things. There's enough people out there that do that kind of stuff. Just people that, I don't know, get their kicks out of destroying stuff. This truck is... this is kind of a unique one, pretty special one. And if all the parts are findable for this engine, then I'd like to rebuild it, or at least give it some respect. But we do know she's got quite a bit of rust under the valve cover, which I'm not too surprised. A lot of these engines under butterfly hoods is one of the issues, is that the water and stuff will seep right down the center, right on top of the valve cover. So she did get a bit of moisture in her. Spark plugs didn't look terrible, so I think it's fairly well preserved, definitely savable. But she did get a bit of rust. I guess I shouldn't tighten that one since I lost the washer from it. It's probably on the floor down there with my crescent wrench. The floor, the mud. Oh well. I'm gonna try and get the ratchet handle back up this way and see if I can't get a snipe on it and try to get some kind of rotation out of this engine still. Alrighty, so I don't have a paint pen handy to mark this, but you can kind of see the line there, and then the 2 marks I made on the fan belt there. So if this thing if it turns at all, you should be able to see it there. If I can get the camera propped up, like so. It's gonna fall down in a second, but and I'm gonna try and wrestle this thing a bit. Did it turn? You guys will have to tell me. Did it turn? You guys will have to tell me. Guess I'd have to turn it quite a ways to notice anyways. Alrighty, well, all things considered, I might have been getting a little ahead of myself working on the engine, but as you guys might be able to tell, I'm a little excited about this project. But I did get the driver's side door open. I just stuck a big pry bar in there and managed to get it out. I hammered on the cab a little bit here and got it worked back some. So I think I can open and close the door a little bit, but it's still tight there. This, obviously that's just been stoved right in. That's going to be a bit of work massaging that back out, but really it's not, it's pretty bad, but you know, it's not that bad. But on the bright side, I can hop up here and pretend that I'm driving this thing now. Which I think is what I'm just going to do for, you know, a long time. Is just pretend that, you know, I'm double clutching and gear jamming and hauling cement all over the state. I don't think this truck ever made it to the Pacific Theater of War. I think it, she stayed stateside forever and somehow ended up here. But what a neat piece of history. And we've got 2 doors opening. Oh, I didn't notice that before. They were somebody was keeping tally marks of their loads. Whatever they were doing, however many trips or whatever, then you'd make a tally mark. Somebody was trying to keep track. God dang, I cannot imagine running one of these day in and day out. You can kind of see the bumper up there, which is nice, so you know how far forward you are. But boy, if you're a guy much bigger than me, and I'm not that big, you would have been pretty tight to drive one of these trucks. These things are not for the bigger guys. Alrighty, as I'm milling about here, I was gonna try and get the old winch line I mean, obviously it's a jankety old winch line, but I was gonna try and get it a little neater looking so it wasn't all wrapped around the bumper, and I pulled the hook out, and of course they tied a knot to get the hook on there, and then they absolutely destroyed the winch line. Somebody got a little bit too feisty on that one. She's yeah. But I'm gonna see if I can't get the dogs here to kick out, and then if I can't wrap that winch line, get it sort of wrapped back on the drum here, since the drum turns freely. Well, I think I'm going to let you guys get back to it. I can sit here and look at this truck and talk about it all the live long day, but there's only so many things I can say before I start repeating myself. And just a neat truck. What a cool one. So yeah, there she is. Yet another project on the ever-growing list, and finally one that I acquired in two distinct chunks that now need to get put back together. This is going to be a pretty long-winded project if you can't tell already, but one that I'm very excited for. This is going to be just a great piece of iron, just a beautiful piece of history too. So yeah, well, I don't have a whole lot else to say. I'm gonna let you guys get back to it, and well, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching.